Wait, can she hear you? They couldn't hear me.
You're live.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm so honored to be able to speak here today. If you don't know me, and hey, you probably don't, I'm PaperFen. I've been a VRChat avatar creator for 3 years, and I'm the creator of the Moontail base. I just finished up my first year of college studying game art design to learn how to do what I love professionally. And today, I'm going to take you on a crash course through avatar making. And I really mean a crash course. I'm going to go really fast. I won't be able to cover everything, but I'll try to cover the things that I think are the most important. If you want to learn more after this, please join my Discord through my card or pop into my Twitch streams. I'm always down to answer questions and chat about this kind of stuff. So, let's start from the very beginning. You want to make an avatar. That's great. Your first step is to actually model out what your creature is going to look like. Don't worry about how it moves right now, you can do all of that later. One of my biggest fears whenever I first started modeling was, is this going to move properly? Am I going to be able to rig this? These questions would put me in a state of paralysis because why go forward if you might have to go back? But don't worry, the answer is yes. You will be able to rig it. You can pretty much rig anything with the right bones, and hey, if it looks weird when it moves, you can always edit it. You're going to want to use the Cat's Blender plugin. This has a ton of helpful tools, but the ones that I use most are the button to quickly enter pose mode and the lip sync shape key maker. The best part is that it and Blender are completely free. Whichever version of Blender you will use depends on your version of Cats, but I use version 3.1.2. But before you make things in 3D, I highly recommend you get or make reference images. These need to be flat images from the front view and the side view at the very least. These are what my references look like. They don't have to be perfectly lined and colored since you're just going to be using them as a guide. You can add references by going into Object Mode, Add, Image, and then Reference Image. This places a flat plane that can be moved and rotated by hand or in the Object Properties tab. It's the orange one. This is a tab where you can type in specific values for your rotation and position to get things exactly where you want them. For references, you'll be setting your rotation to intervals of 90 degrees to make sure it's as flat as can be. By using the orthographic view modes, you can line up your outline perfectly with your references as you build the model. Orthographic, by the way, means whenever you look at a 3D model in 2D. You can get to this view mode by clicking the directional buttons in the corner, and you can get out of it simply by rotating out of it with a middle mouse press. There's a few tools that are key to use while modeling. Firstly, the Move tool. Select a vertex or a large selection or an object, and then click and drag. It's a move tool, easy peasy. You can also use the arrows to drag in a specific direction or drag while holding the buttons X, Y, or Z. There's also the rotate tool, of course. It's self-explanatory. For all these tools, you can type in specific values when doing it by hand just won't cut it. There are 3 modes of selection while in edit mode: vertex, edge, and face. Vertex select is for when you want to manipulate specific points of your mesh. Edge select is great for when you're selecting loops, and face select is best for when you want to select parts of your mesh to hide or delete. You can hide your selection with H, hide everything with Shift H, and unhide it all with Alt H. And to select an entire loop, hold Alt and click on an edge. You can hold Shift to make multiple selections, and hold Control to select all of the points between 2 points. The Scale tool is next. Select parts of a mesh by clicking the wireframe button, and then dragging your selection box around what you want to scale. Press and hold the circle to scale in all directions, or use the colored lines to scale in certain directions. Remember to make your selections in wireframe mode. Blender selects what you can see, so if you're just in regular old solid mode, you won't select the faces behind the front ones. Alternatively, the shortcut for scaling is the S key. And if you hold the Alt and S key, you can do something called scale along normals. You'll basically inflate or deflate the model based on the direction the faces are facing. And a side note, normals are the direction that the verts and faces are facing. They tell the model how to be shaded. I'll go more in depth later. Next up is the knife tool. This bad boy is your best friend. It's how you add verts to a mesh. Click to make lines between verts and press space to make your cuts or escape to cancel. The bestie to the knife tool is the loop cut tool. This makes a cut around an entire loop, which is why it's important to make sure your model has loops. The extrude tool is extremely important. Make a selection along some edges and faces and drag it out to extrude a new face from your existing edges. By pressing X, Y, or Z, you can lock your extrusion along a specific axis. Next, we have the inset and the bevel tools. These are similar in the sense that they both create more faces along a specific face selection. However, an easy way to tell them apart is that a bevel tool creates faces from lines. It will split the edges of your face selection into more lines, while an inset tool creates more lines from faces. An inset will basically scale the original face selection while leaving the lines where the original face was. Bevels can be good when you're working on edges that are too sharp, and insets are a good way to move faces in or out or make holes in raised areas. Finally is this button here. This is called proportional editing. When this is turned on, you can move around all of the vertices while also moving the verts around them proportionally. Use your scroll wheel to change the area of influence, which is indicated by the circle around the selection. If you click the drop-down, you can turn on Connected Only. This will make it so that you only move verts that are connected to the original selection, not just any verts that are close by. I originally didn't know how to use this tool, so imagine moving each individual vert into place by hand. Those are really dark times for me. Most of the other buttons I never even touch, but they can be useful in certain circumstances, so play around with them to figure out how to use them. The best experience here is hands-on experience. The best way to model things is in an A pose or a T pose with its mouth open. I recommend a T pose as Unity much prefers it. I always start my models with their mouths open, as it's easier to model the inside of the mouth when it's not all closed up against itself. And once you have a jawbone, you can just close the mouth, clean it up, and set it as the base pose. But bones and such are a later topic. Right now, you're going to have to choose your modeling technique. There are 3 main ones to choose from that I'll be covering today. These are edge modeling, box modeling, and sculpting. They each have their pros and cons, but ultimately it's up to what you like most. For either box modeling or edge modeling, you're going to want to work with a mirrored surface. Blender has what are called modifiers. There are a lot to choose from the list, but the most important one is the mirror modifier. You'll work on one side of the model and it will automatically mirror to the other side. I personally mirror across the x-axis. Blender and Unity don't use the same axes. Blender is -y forward, while Unity is z forward. This sounds really confusing, I know, but all you need to know is that if you model in Blender across the x-axis with your model's face facing the -y direction, when you export your model as an FBX, it will fix the axis so it's compatible with Unity. If your model's ever flipped around, there's an easy way to fix it. Snap to the top view or the Z orthographic view of the model. In object mode, select it and press R to rotate it, and then type in your keyboard 90. This will rotate your model exactly 90 degrees. Keep doing this until it faces -y. Once it does, hit Object, Apply, and then All Transforms. Now you'll be able to mirror across the x-axis. Now onto the modifier itself. This mirror works across the origin of the model. It's that itty-bitty little orange dot. This is the point at which it will move, scale, and rotate while in object mode. When you move things in object mode, you'll be moving them with the origin. In edit mode, you'll be affecting things without affecting the origin. You can move around this origin as well, but you most likely won't need to do that very often. But keep it in mind as it can be helpful for fixing mirroring issues should they arise. The mirror modifier can be set to mirror a specific object as well, and you can turn on clipping. This means that the vertices that are closest to the origin will merge with each other automatically, instead of staying as 2 separate pieces. The merge distance refers to how close the verts need to be for their normals to merge. Once you're done making what you want, you can apply the modifier to finalize the other half. After you've applied it, you can use the Mesh Symmetry mode to mirror your movements and shaping in edit mode along a specific axis. Remember that tools that add verts will no longer mirror after you've applied this modifier. If you happen to have one stray vert that gets unmirrored, you can fix it manually by opening the Tools sidebar and looking at the Item tab. Here you can see the specific locations of verts. You can copy each vert's X, Y, and Z value, and then paste them over to the other vert, but with the negative value in whichever axis you're mirrored in. If you have a lot of verts that you need fixed, you can select one entire half of the model, delete it, and then re-add the mirror modifier. But I have a very important note. In the future, you will be making what are called shape keys, and you cannot apply a modifier to a mesh that has shape keys. So make sure that you have everything nice and mirrored before you get to that step. You can check by selecting your model in edit mode and wiggling it around with the Mesh Symmetry mode on. If you see any stretchy verts not behaving, you know you need to fix your mirroring. There is a workaround way to fix the symmetry after you've made shape keys without using a modifier if you really need to. You can go into Sculpt mode and use the Symmetrize button. Do not use the Symmetrize button in edit mode, it will break all of your shape keys. The downside to this method is that anything that's asymmetrical will be broken. For example, if you have a wink shape key, you'll end up with a shape key that's either perfectly mirrored, both eyes open, or both eyes closed. This is why I always keep a right and a left version of any shape keys that are asymmetrical, as you can copy shape keys to one another. Any weights will also be messed up, but there's a fix to that as well. I'll talk about both of these fixes when I discuss rigging and shape keys. It's better to never run into these problems at all, but always remember that there are options and solutions for everything. If you run into a problem, describe it to Google, and I'm sure that there's a Reddit post of someone asking the same question. Finally, you need to know what polys are. Polygons are what a model is made out of. Each face is a polygon, and they come in 3 different shapes: tris, quads, and n-gons. Quads are squares and are optimal to use because they can make really clean loops. Tris are, of course, triangles. They can sometimes pinch weirdly when rigged and make lighting errors and will interrupt edge loops. Sometimes it's easiest just to connect things with tries though, so don't worry about it too much. And then of course there's n-gons. This is a polygon with over 4 vertices. They are generally considered to be pretty bad in modeling, although some will argue otherwise. When these deform, they can end up looking really strange, and lighting does not play with them nicely. But if you're getting more lighting errors with your tries, and you can't get nice quads, try using an n-gon. You probably aren't going to get perfect all quads topology your first time. Hell, my models don't even have that, and they work just fine. Plus, having a low poly count for VRChat is way more important than having smooth, perfect all quads topology. Functionality in this instance is a lot more important than perfection. To keep track of your triangle count, you can go to the Overlays tab and have statistics checked. You'll need to pay attention to this as VRChat has a soft limit of 70,000 polys, meaning you can go over this number, but for the sake of optimization, you really shouldn't. Now we get onto the modeling techniques. We'll start with box modeling. This technique is about blocking out simple shapes and then carving in your details by adding loop cuts. Think of this as the ice sculpture making of the 3D modeling world. Within Blender, you can add basic shapes like cubes, cylinders, and spheres to build a blocky version of whatever you're making. You can do this in Object or in Edit mode by going into the Add tab and then pressing Mesh and choosing from the list. You'll make use of the loop cut, bevel, and inset tools. The benefit to this method is that it's relatively beginner-friendly. It's a lot easier to be able to see the entire model you're working on at once and building on it slowly. You can see the entire body quickly, and it's more likely that you'll get an even level of detail, even with limited experience. However, as a beginner, you probably won't get a super high level of detail. And on top of that, you then have to merge all of those individual parts together, which can be tricky and lead to some messy polys. There is, however, a secret weapon to the box modeling method, which mitigates its main weaknesses. This is called the double subdivide method. Add a cube, add 2 subdivision modifiers to it. Set one of them to simple and the other one to Catamol Clark. Select the on-cage viewer next to the modifier's name. You should also add a mirror modifier on top of this. Then enter edit mode. Move the 2 cubes, now not cubes, away from each other. While clipping is on, delete the face that's in between them. Now you'll have 1 cube not cube. Model as you normally would, using loop cuts, insets, and whatever you want to make a nice body shape. This method is probably the fastest way to get all quads to body topology quickly. Once you're done, you can apply the modifiers and add all of your extra details. The downside to this method is that you can't detail things like a face or fluff while the modifiers are unapplied. And sometimes your poly count might end up being too high, even for VRChat, if you put in too many loop cuts. Although this can be cleaned up later. After you've applied the subdivisions, you can merge the verts together or delete entire loops that are unnecessary. This method is probably the fastest there is for making a whole body quickly. Next up is edge modeling, which is what I started with and is my favorite method. This involves using flat planes and extruding out the edges to make an outline that you then fill in. In object mode, add a plane and use the loop cut tool to slice it into 4. This is where you'll start your extrusions. You'll spend most of your time in edge select mode, hence the name. In this mode, you'll select your edges and use the extrude tool to pull them out where you want them. Keep in mind, you can subdivide your extrusions later, and this method is fastest when you don't focus on making things too high poly too fast. When using this technique, it is extremely important to have references, as you'll most likely be making your outlines first. If you have a reference, you can just extrude out your lines all the way around the edges. If you've ever seen those videos of people making figurines with a 3D pen, you've probably seen them make lines similar to these. That's because once you have these, filling in what's between them becomes a lot easier. With these outlines, you can just continue to extrude out your points and connect them. You'll connect the verts of these extruded faces by using vertex select mode, picking 2 points by shift-clicking, and then right-clicking to merge vertices. You'll most likely choose to merge at center, but you can also specify to merge at 2 specific vertices by selecting at first or at last. And this is the general pipeline of edge modeling. Extrude, merge, points, repeat, and then add loop cuts. The downside to edge modeling is that it can be pretty overwhelming. You don't get to see it coming together as quickly as with box modeling, and in addition, you can accidentally end up making one part of the model's mesh way more detailed than the other part, and getting nice quads topology can be an absolute nightmare. And you might end up with a model that's a bit squashed looking if you spend too much time in orthographic mode. Make sure to spin your model around a lot to get a nice look from all angles. Plus, it's kind of stress relieving. You have no idea how many times I've just taken a break from modeling just to go woo, woo, woo. The final modeling method is sculpting. Unlike other techniques, this one takes place in sculpt mode, not in edit mode. This mode utilizes tools that deform and move the geometry of your mesh like how one might use tools on clay. They're quite literally sculpt mode tools that have the name clay in them, because your mesh pretty much just becomes a digital lump of clay. To begin sculpting, you first need to have a high poly surface to sculpt on. If your starting model is too low poly, it will be impossible to get a good level of detail as you work. Plus, it'll just look like a total mess. In object mode, add an icosphere. There's a tiny little pop-up on the bottom left where you can control what this icosphere will look like. Your main point of interest is the subdivisions tab. Change it from anywhere between 6 and 8. Some systems might lag with a higher poly count. Now you can either click on your object and then enter sculpt mode, or you can go into the built-in sculpting tab. There are a lot of tools, but you won't end up using all of them, so try not to get too overwhelmed by choice. Each of these tools has a radius and a strength. The stronger it is, the more it will move your model. You can either change it via the bars at the top, or by clicking F to change the radius, and Shift F to change the strength. You'll also notice a little button next to the radius and strength bars. This is a pen pressure setting. If you're using a drawing tablet, you can enable pressure sensitivity to affect the strength or your radius. And each tool also has a direction, either positive or negative. By holding Control, you can invert the tool. For instance, the Draw tool usually draws mounds on top of the surface, but if you hold Control, it will push into the clay. You can also click the plus or minus buttons next to the strength and radius. The most important tools are Draw, Clay Strips, Inflate, Crease, Smooth, Grab, and Elastic Deform. Draw is a simple draw brush. Clay draws square shapes. Inflate inflates things. Crease makes creases and sharp pinches. Smooth things. Grab grabs things. And Elastic Deform can be used to push and move things around. The usual workflow is to use any of the blue clay tools to build out your rough shape, and then use the smooth brush to smooth out your topology. Then the yellow tools can be used to pull and move things around quickly to change the size and shape without having to resculpt things. As you use these tools, you'll notice that your geometry is going to become messy. When you pull apart the parts of the sculpt more, you'll end up with fewer and fewer polygons to work with. There are a few ways to fix this. One is the remesh option. Press Shift R to view the remesh grid. This is going to show you how big or how small your polys will be. To actually apply this, you can either click the remesh dropdown and hit remesh, or you can press Ctrl R. You can also turn on what's called Dyn Topo, or dynamic topology. This adds more topology as you sculpt dynamically. You can change the detail size number to control how much or how little topology it adds. A higher number adds less, and a lower number will add more. The final important button is the Symmetrize button. Sculpt mode doesn't perfectly mirror your topology for edit mode, so you'll need to hit the Symmetry dropdown and press Symmetrize to mirror it manually. This is useful if you just need to use something like the Smooth tool while using either box modeling or edge modeling. Now, sculpting is not at all my strong suit, and I probably won't be able to cover questions related to specifically to that. But there are plenty of free video exercises on how to sculpt within Blender that are really helpful. With this method, you can get some crazy high level of detail in a matter of seconds. Again, it's just like clay. Now, this seems great, but then there's the bane of every sculptor, retopology. This is when you have to redo your entire topology, which is just a fancy way of saying how your polygons are distributed to make up your mesh or model. When you sculpt, you then also have to do edge modeling afterwards, because sculpting will leave you with a way too high poly count for VRChat. However, there is another benefit to this. In something like Substance Painter, you can take your existing high poly mesh and your low poly mesh and bake the normal data onto your low poly creation. This basically means that you can have the level of detail you had on your sculpt on a functional model. So, the TLDR is as follows. Box modeling is like wood carving, sculpting is like sculpting, and edge modeling is just kind of its own thing, but I adore it. You can make use of a mix of different methods too. Maybe you want to use edge modeling for the head and box modeling for the body. Or you want to sculpt, but you use box modeling for the body, and then use sculpting for the head. Everyone's workflow is unique. Also, it's a water break time. Delicious and nutritious. Okay, so let's say you have a basic mirrored humanoid shape going on, but oh no, it's bald. I'm going to save you the pain of making hair and fur by hand by teaching you about the magic of curves. In object mode, hit Add, Curve, and then Bezier. This bad boy will save you hours. Trust me. I once made an entire mane of hair by hand. I think it took around a week. Anyway, enter edit mode on your curve. Right now, it looks like a simple line with these big red lines coming off of it. Those red lines are what point the big line to where you want it to go. In this green tab here, which is the Object Data Properties tab, you can control how the curve looks. Open up the Geometry tab and focus on Depth under Bevel. This is how you tell the curve how thick you want it to start. The second thing to note is the Bevel Resolution and the Resolution Preview U. The resolution is how many edges it has lengthwise, and the resolution U is how many loops are between each point. Messing with these will make the curve higher or lower poly. Now, for the fun part, which is shaping the curve. Move the middle point of the red line to move that part of the curve in 3D space, and move the other two ends to change its rotation. Scale the length of the line with S, which changes how much control it has over the curve. And finally, use Alt-S to change the thickness around that point. Select a point and press E to add another point, and voila, you can make hair, fur, and tails the easy way. You can also add a mirror modifier to your curves. This will leave you with sharp, pointy ends, but if you want rounded fur ends, you can set the bevel resolution to 0, select Fill Caps, and then under Modifier, add a weld and a subdivision modifier. The weld must be above the subdivision modifier. Then set the level viewport to 1, and boom, you'll be making rounded fur curves. Once you have the shape you want, you can go back into Object Mode, right-click, and hit Convert to Mesh. If you added any modifiers, you'll have to add them again and reapply them. And if you kept the sharp points, you'll want to go into Edit Mode again and select all of the verts around the tip of your fluff and merge them by distance. You don't want holes. Normals, as I mentioned, are the direction that any part of the geometry is facing. These invisible lines dictate how a model is to be shaded and tell which side is the front side and which side is the back side. If you right-click, Blender has two shading modes, Shade Smooth and Shade Flat. Smooth shading smooths all of the normal data, while flat shading keeps the harsh edges. It's up to you when you want to use which type of shading. For me personally, I found it easier to shade flat at first, and then change to smooth shading later. You can also use smooth shading while still marking specific edges to be sharp. This is quite literally just called Mark Sharp. In Edit Mode, right-click an edge, and then hit Mark Sharp. If you want to remove it, hit the Clear Sharp button right underneath it. This is useful for creating stylized fur designs. You'll also need to know how to reset your normals. This is handy if your normals ever happen to get messed up for any reason, become flipped, or for setting things as sharp and unsharp. Select your entire mesh by clicking A in Edit Mode. Then hit Mesh, Normals, and Reset Vectors. You can also choose to recalculate outside or inside, but I always find that resetting the vectors is more helpful. You can also show the direction of your faces in times where your normals have found themselves to be inside out. Select the Overlays dropdown on the top right. There's a button in the middle that enables face orientation. Back faces are red and front ones are blue. To fix any flipped normals, select the problematic ones and hit Mesh, Normals, and then Flip. You can either flip all of the faces at once, or you can select specific faces in cases where your mesh gets really out of whack. Having good UVs is essential when making avatars, especially if you later plan on selling them. The UV of a model is all of the faces laid out flat on a square texture space. It's basically like a sewing pattern for a fursuit. You've probably seen videos of people making those, but if you haven't, the process is straightforward. You put duct tape all around your shape, and then draw out where you're going to cut it. When you cut apart the duct tape, the pieces will lie flat, so you can use them as a template for how you want to cut your fabric. Well, in this instance, the duct tape is like the UV, the lines and scissors are your seams, and the fabric is the texture. Seams are red lines that mark where a UV is to be split. Individual parts of the UV pattern are called islands. These islands need to be far enough away from each other that the textures won't bleed into one another, but close enough that you can have a high-res texture. A small UV island means it has less pixel space, which increases the blurriness. You can check the size of your islands and how they will look with a texture with something called a UV grid. Click to add an image, and then change the type to UV grid. It's also important to have on sync selection as it makes the UV making process much easier. You can mark seams in Edit Mode by clicking on your lines, selecting your lines, right-clicking, and then clicking Mark Seam. You can also do a neat little trick to be able to mirror your seams. Select one seam, then go to Select, Similar, and then Seam. Once all of your seams are selected, go into Select again, and then choose Select Mirror. I know, it's a lot of selection. Then you can click to mark your seams all over again. Now, before I tell you how to do this the right way, I'm going to give you a warning. Never, ever, ever use the Smart UV option, ever. It is awful. I know it seems like a hassle to have to cut seams into your model and manually make your UVs, but I promise you it is worth it. The Smart UV option will automatically cut apart your model, yes, but it also makes a ton of tiny little islands that are impossible to texture properly. So just save yourself the trouble and do it the right way the first time, please. Now, on to how to do it properly. Navigate to the UV Editing tab. You'll see a new window pop up called the UV Editor. If you don't have it, you can always change your window by clicking the button in the top left corner and choosing from the list. You can also add extra windows by right-clicking the top bar and clicking either vertical or horizontal split. Now that we're in the right window, we can start. The way that I mark my seams is to first cut all the way through the center of the model. That way, the UV can be perfectly mirrored. I make loops around parts like the shoulders, wrists, hips, tails, ankles, neck, and so on. On parts that are more tube shaped, such as the arms, I'll make only one cut lengthwise. If you make two seams running down the arm, you'll end up with two islands for one arm. This will function, but it can be pretty confusing for someone else who's trying to use your textures. But with only one seam, you'll have only one island per arm. The trick is to use the least amount of cuts to get the least amount of islands, but to have them as flat as you can. When you make a good amount of progress, you can create your UVs in edit mode by hitting the UV button and then pressing unwrap. A drop-down will pop up where you can change the margin of your islands. You can also, of course, manually move them around. Adding bones seems scary, but actually it's not that bad. VRChat requires the use of the Unity humanoid rig. It's a bit particular about naming, so remember to name your bones. It is a must. You'll need the following: hips, spine, chest, neck, shoulders, upper arms, lower arms, hands, fingers, upper legs, lower legs, and feet. I think I was about to say head twice. You can make two heads if you want, but that'd be pretty cool, actually. Anyway, there are a few exceptions. For anyone who's confused like I was, there's only one hip bone. Your bones also need to be in the correct order. A parent bone is one that holds all of the others, and the child bones are the ones that move in cooperation with the parent. So for instance, the shoulder is the parent to the upper arm, the lower arm, and the hand, but the hand is only the parent to the fingers. Every bone beneath the shoulder will move when it does, and all the bones together are stored in an armature. To create bones, go to Add, Armature, and then Single Bone. The first bone you see will act as your hip bone. Then go into Edit mode. Move that bone to the hip. What you'll see, it disappears into your model. You can fix that. Under the Orange Object Properties tab, under Viewport Display, be sure to check In Front. Now your bones will always be in view. To add more bones to a chain, click a bone and press E. You'll add your spine, chest, neck, and head bones next. Remember to name them in the green Bone tab. Then you'll make your arm bones and your leg bones. But notice, you need to have a gap between where your chest bone ends and where your shoulder begins. So press Shift-D to duplicate a bone. Put it into position for the shoulder. Then select the shoulder bone first, and then the chest bone by holding Shift as you select. Right-click, hit Parent, Make, and Keep Offset. But now you only have one shoulder. Click it, duplicate it, and move it to the other side. Name the first one shoulder_L, and the second one shoulder_R, or vice versa, depending on which one you do first. Turn on Symmetry mode, and then move the bone that's in its correct position ever so slightly. The other one will automatically snap into its right place. And now, as you make more arm bones, they will automatically show up to the other side. The same principle can be applied to leg bones. Remember to name them accordingly as you go along, always with the _L or _R to mark them. Anything like tails and ears are optional, but they will look really good as fizz bones. I recommend using a chain of at least a minimum of 3 bones for longer, more flowy physics, and a chain of 1 bone for anything bouncy. Keep in mind that Quest has a fizz bone limit of 64 bones. This includes N bones. N bones get automatically added to an exported FBX by default. I somehow got mixed up. Whatever. Quickly open the export menu and click FBX. Under the armature selection, there's a checkmark that says Add Leaf Bones. Make sure you do not add those. Now we can move on to this one. I was just really excited to talk about DigiLegs. I have a job for you. I desire for there to be more VRChat avatars that use Digidegrade legs. They look really, really cool, and I love them. So watch this video and go learn how to make them. They are so cool, and you can make them in Quest Standalone now, because Quest Standalone uses rotation constraints. Yippee! So go make DigiLegs. They're so cool. Weight painting seems scary. And yes, it is. It's very scary. But with practice, it'll become just as easy as everything else. Select your armature and your model at the same time. Make sure your armature is yellow. Yellow is what the parent will be. Then right-click, hit Parent, and Automatic Weights. Your model has now been moved beneath your armature. This means it's parented. Now click on the green Object Data Properties tab on your model. It now has vertex groups. Vertex groups are basically like tags for specific vertices of your mesh. With the automatic weights option, your model automatically gets assigned vertex groups that match your armature's bones, and it gets weights to go along with them. Now select both your armature and your model again, but this time the model needs to be the yellow one. Then you can enter weight paint mode. Your mesh will turn blue. Shift-click any bone to enter that bone's vertex group. Red means the bone has full control over that area. The automatic weights option is honestly really good at defining a humanoid rig, but it's going to need some touching up here and there. The two most important tools are the draw and the blur. Draw is how you draw on weights. You can change the weight it will set the drawn area to. 1 is full control and 0 is no control, or blue. The blur tool is how you can soften weight distribution between your bones, if your model is pinching oddly. Another good tool is the gradient tool. You can click it and drag it in a direction and it will make a gradient effect, either erasing or adding more weighting. I use this to make sure that areas that aren't supposed to be weighted aren't, since it sweeps across the entire mesh. Under the options menu, there's also something called auto normalize. This option will make sure that there is always a value of 1 across the entire model. This is really good for when you're painting things like fur, where the automatic weights option isn't going to work properly. It can also help you make sure that there aren't any areas with little to no weighting, which can lead to smearing. However, it can cause some errors. Since it's always trying to make sure that the model is fully painted, when you use the blur tool, it can cause some weird artifacts. Finally, there's a way to add masks. Turn on the Paint Mask button. You can either click to add faces directly to the mask or press L to select everything that's connected, then hide anything that's unselected. You'll have to exit the mask selection mode to change which bone you're focusing on. Now that you know how to use the weight paint tools, let's quickly see what the automatic weights look like. Using the Cats plugin, enter pose mode from the toolbar. This is a great starting place, but just looking at our little demo guy here, everything needs work. The arms twist too much in the middle, causing pinching, the legs pinch under the knee, the shoulders pull the armpit up way too much, and the jaw and ears are just completely out of whack. If you want to focus on a specific area, you can set the pose in pose mode and then switch to object mode and then back into weight paint mode. You'll be able to paint while seeing how it'll affect the focus movement in real time. Things like elbows are a real pain to deal with because they need to twist and bend. The best fix for this is to have really, really good topology. There's something called the Pixar elbow that can really take your elbow bends to the next level. It's complicated and I don't really have time to explain it, which is why I didn't make it on my little demo guy. I recommend looking up images of it online, as there aren't many tutorials that cover how to make it specifically. What I did was I just stared at an image of it and tried to recreate it as best I could. Also, remember that your lower arm bone twists. Your topology should follow this twisting motion. Look at your own arm bones in resting position. Draw a line with your finger across where the inner point of your wrist meets the outer point of your elbow. Your topology should follow that line. And here's what my base's elbows look like, with the twist and the elbow fully finished. I use more specifically what's called the two-loop elbow, but it falls under the same name as the other methods. I think one of the trickiest things for me to make first was eyes. I went through multiple phases of eye making. I first used flat planes, then went fully round, then rounded with flattened areas for the iris and pupil. And I learned a really important trick for making sure that your round eyes rotate properly. You need to make sure that the origin of your eye is always in the center of mass while you're creating it. That way it'll rotate properly. So add a UV sphere, move it into place in object mode. Add a mirror modifier and uncheck merge and clipping. Then under your body, select your body under the mirror object button. Sculpt your model's eye sockets around it more if you need to. Then go into edit mode. You don't want to move it in edit mode because that'll move it off of its origin. You can rotate it. So rotate it so that one of the points is facing basically where you want the pupil to be. Then add more loop cuts around it. These loops will be the eye's iris. Mark the outermost player of the iris sharp, and then indent the middle so that your eye makes a nice flat or slightly concave surface. Those will make your eye look much more realistic. Shade it smooth and reset your normals if you have to. Now in object mode, have your eye selected and press Shift S, then cursor to active. This is how you'll move your cursor. You can snap things to it easily, and in this instance, you'll be snapping the eye bones to it. In your armature, make 2 new bones, IL and IR. Now press the head point of the bone, press Shift S again, and press selection to cursor. Then move the tail so that it's above it. Finally, apply the mirror modifier and parent the eyes as armature deform. Do not auto-weigh these ones. Before you can weigh them, you need to move the origin to the center of both of the eyes, or else mirroring anything isn't going to work. So in object mode, once more, select both of the eyes, hit Object, Apply, and then All Transforms. Then you'll weight the eyes so they are 100% weighted to their respective eye bones. And ta-da! You now have eyes. Spin them around in pose mode to make sure that they move correctly. And if they don't move correctly, you can always separate the two eyes and put the origin back to the center of mass. Hit L to select one of the eyes, right-click, and hit Separate Selection. In object mode, hit Origin, Set Origin, and then to Center of Mass. Now you'll be able to reset the bones to the eye's rotation point. Select both eyes, right-click, and hit Join to join the two objects together again. If you ever have to go back and symmetrize your model after you've weighted, your vertex groups will be merged. Either your left or your right, depending on which way your symmetrizer was working, will control both sides instead of only one. This, obviously, is not ideal, but it can be fixed. Like I've said before, there's a solution to everything. In my little demo guy here, the left side is the one that has both of the weights. You'll delete all of the empty ones, and in my case, I'll be deleting all of the right ones. You can delete them by clicking the little minus button. Now, in edit mode, select the entire half of the mesh that you just deleted vertex groups for. There's a little button under the vertex groups box that says remove. Once you have the whole half selected, click that button to remove all of the weighting from each remaining left group. Then, duplicate each left group and rename it to the new R version. Press the little down arrow and click Copy Vertex Group. Once each one is copied and renamed, go back into Weight Paint mode and hit Mirror Vertex Group on each of the left side groups. It won't look like it's doing anything right away, but this is actually mirroring all of the groups labeled R. When all of the groups have been mirrored, you now have your old weights restored. It's a bit of a tedious process, but once you know how to do it, it's honestly really easy. Shape keys are made in the green Object Properties tab under the Vertex groups. These are called shape keys in Blender and blend shapes in Unity. These shapes save data on how the vertices of a mesh should move. They move linearly between 0 and 100% activated. You'll use them for lip-syncing expressions and in-game modifications and face-tracking shapes. But for now, I'll just be showing you how to make the lip-sync shape keys so you can learn the basic principles. Before you can begin, you need to now close your model's jaw. In pose mode, you can move your jawbone so that it closes, and then use cats to apply the pose as a rest pose. This will set it to what's known as the basis shape key. It's the key that the model will be at rest in. Now you can edit the mesh and clean it up. Once the mouth is closed, you can make the other shape keys. Cats is a handy tool that will automatically make the shape keys needed for lip syncing. These are called visemes. First, however, it needs 3 already created visemes, which are A, O, and Sh. Add new shape keys with the plus button and rename them as you go. As you work, think of how your jaw, lips, and tongue move as you speak. For visemes that open the jaw, you can enter pose mode again and hit pose to shape key when your jaw is open. You can either just rename that shape key and use it directly, or you can copy your already created shape key. Select your entire mesh or just your head, press Ctrl V and hit Blend from Shape. Select the shape you want to be added in the dropdown and uncheck Add. A is going to have your mouth open and your tongue down. Remember to also raise your upper lips for a more exaggerated look. O will bring your jaw more closed than A and will purse your lips slightly. You can also copy the A key that you now have, but it's something like 50%, so the mouth is more closed. And Sh will have your lips slightly pursed and your teeth together. With these 3, Cats will create all of the visemes that you need for VR chat. But to get them looking really nice and polished, you'll have to go in and manually edit them. It's a great way to start and make sure that you have all the names correct, though. I mentioned before that sometimes your shape keys can get really messed up, especially if you need to symmetrize your model after making them. So let's take a look at this example. I've got a blink L and a blink R, but blink L blinks both eyes, and the blink R doesn't do anything. There's an easy solution for this. Select one entire half of your model on the blend shape that's empty, in this case, blink R. Hit Ctrl V to copy a blend shape and choose blink L. Now swap to blink L and blend from the basis shape key to clear that blink side. Now you have your individual blinks again. If the blend shape that's been mirrored overlaps at the middle vertices, you'll need to copy 50% of the full shape to one side's middle vertices and 50% to the other. That way, when it meets in the middle, it makes one normal full shape and doesn't stretch too far. You might have seen it on the blink there, but the upper eyelids don't look very good. That's both because I rushed it, and also because the faces are stretching really far to cover the whole eye. It would look even worse with the texture there. To hide this, I always make physical eyelashes instead of textured ones. I like using curves to do this since it's really fast with the rounded curves option I showed you earlier. Another thing I like adding is eye caps. These are an extra socket layer that sits inside of the eye and are pitch black. For me, they help control what the eye will look like when the pupil is passing into the head. Being able to see the body texture underneath just looked really wrong to me, so I like having an extra layer. I make this just by duplicating the inner ring of the eye socket and extruding out the walls once. These aren't required, but I really like how they look. Applying all transforms is an important but small step. I've shown before when you want to reset the origin point of certain models. I ran into this issue early on where I tried to use Gogo Loco on a model that I hadn't applied all transforms to, and it broke all of the sitting animations, and applying transforms was the way to fix it. So just make sure you remember to do this small step. When making a VRChat avatar with paws, I highly recommend adding custom animations for each hand pose. These are idle, fist, point, gun, peace, rock, and thumbs up. VRChat's basic animations for the hands will most likely look broken on paws. It's also relatively simple. Move to the Animations tab. The bottom window is for animations. Change it from Dope Sheet to Action Editor, and then change the left window to Nonlinear Animation. This is what's known as an NLA strip. You can push animations onto the strip to easily confirm that you'll export them. I've had issues in the past with animations not exporting when I didn't use this method. Click the plus button to add a new animation. Let's start with the idle since it's the easiest. Name it idle_L and then enter pose mode. Pose your left hand how you want it to be posed, and then select all of your finger bones, right-click, and hit Copy Post to make sure you don't lose it. Right-click again and hit Insert Keyframe, Location, and Rotation. You'll see a bunch of yellow names and dots appear on the bottom window. That is a keyframe. It'll save that pose. Move to position 10 and make another keyframe. Your animations don't need to be long, but you need to have 2 points, one at 0 and one at 10. Now click the Shield button next to the name of your animation. This will assure that it's saved. Finally, press the push down button to move it to the NLA track. Move on to your next animation by making a new one and naming it idle_R. Select all of the right bones, right-click, and hit Paste X-Flipped Pose. Then insert your keyframes for this one, save it, and push it down again. Remember to rename the NLA track animations as well. Continue to do this with all of your animations. Every hand animation starting 0 position should be your idle pose, so the hands can seamlessly blend into the next pose. When you import these animations into Unity, they might import with the animation data linked to all of the bones. Remember that you will need to delete these extra keys in Unity's animation tab to prevent breakage. Once all is done and made and you're ready to export, you'll need to export your model as an FBX. To make sure you export it properly, there's a few settings I'll go over. Firstly, you can check a box to limit your export to selected objects only. This is good when you have Blender files with things that you don't want to export yet, as it will only export the things you have selected. I already mentioned leaf bones, but I will say it again. Make sure you uncheck adding leaf bones. It is under the Armature tab. Right under the Armature tab is the option to bake animations, and this is how you will export your animations to Unity within your FBX. You can save these settings so you never have to input them again by clicking the plus button at the top to add a new operator preset. Then anytime you want to export, just click the preset you made. Be sure to save your FBX in a place where you'll remember it's located, and then export it. Blender's export settings aren't the only thing that's important. Unity's import settings are too. All you need to do to add an FBX is to drag and drop it into your Assets folder, which is the bottom window. Click on the FBX. On the right side is the inspector. This is where you'll see all of your import settings. Turn on Read/Write Legacy Blend Shape Normals, set the normals to calculate, and set the smoothing angle to 90. These are the settings that I personally find the best. Setting the normals to calculate and raising the number is how I fixed the problem where my body altering blend shapes wouldn't also change the shadows and normals on the body. Now move to the Rig tab and set the animation type to humanoid. Click Apply when you're done. There's a Configure button underneath this, and this is where you'll change the bones and muscle settings. Check to make sure all of the correct bones are in their place, and under the head, remove the jaw by clicking into it and hitting the Delete key. Because you have Visemes, you don't want the jaw to be controlled by the animator. To get your animations out of your FBX, select them all and press Ctrl-D to duplicate them. For any animations that move parts of the humanoid skeleton, you must do this after applying the rig. For anything like tails, ears, and ears that aren't part of the humanoid skeleton, you must do it before applying the rig. In your hierarchy, left tab, click into your avatar and press Add Component. Search for the VRC avatar descriptor and add it. Under Lip Sync, press Auto Detect. As long as your body mesh is named body, it will detect it automatically. Otherwise, you'll need to manually input them. Under eye look, press enable. Enter your eye bones, and then press preview on the rotation states below. Now, I purposely made a mistake here. These rotation states are based on the rotation of the eye bones. In Blender, my eye bones aren't straight up and down, and their roll or rotation isn't 0. Now that I've edited that, look how easy it is to make the eye rotation states in Unity. So remember to set your eyes roll to 0 and keep them straight up and down. Just below the eye rotation states are the eyelids. I made blink blend shapes, so this is where those will go. You can also add eyelid movement when you look up or down. Below the eye states are the playable layers. This is where you'll add custom animations. Your hand animations will go in the gesture layer, and your expressions will go under FX. I am not going to cover this because honestly, I think it's the most covered topic in VRChat tutorials. So here's a bunch that helped me. There's a lot you can do with the animation controllers, but they are pretty confusing. When I first started in Unity, I worked for hours to try to get the animation controllers to work, but I couldn't, and I just went to bed crying. So be kind to yourself as you learn. It's hard, but I promise it does get better. So there you have it. That's all I could fit into this amount of time. Again, if you want to learn more, I'm always open for questions. I want there to be more avatar creators. This is such a fun community that I love so much. I'll be around the whole Furality, and I'll be at the dealers den meets as much as I can be. And if you have any questions right now, I will be open for them until our time is up.
All right, I have some questions from the Q&A Discord for you. You got a lot already. So one of the first ones I got for you is question. I have from Curly. Question: I have no experience in Blender, but high ambitions to be an avatar builder. What's the most efficient thing I can do or make as my first creation in Blender? I want to familiarize myself with the workflow and Blender's quirks and dive deep into the creative process without frustrating myself too hard.
That all sounds absolutely amazing. So first of all, good job. It will be amazing. Your journey will be awesome, and I believe in you. Second of all, to answer your question, I first started working on just the head. Like, I didn't go into the body at all. I just made a head to mess around with like the jawbone and such, and visemes and everything. So that's honestly where I would recommend you start. And then like doing the body separately and all of the bones and such, that's a completely different journey. Because really, like, the head and the body are two completely different beasts when you're starting. Because one obviously has visemes and, you know, mouth movements and blinking, and you have to learn shape keys and all that. So to split them up that way, I think that's the best way to start, honestly. And again, good luck.
I have another one from Snee asking, are there any additional Blender plugins you enjoy using that might be useful for all the users starting out? And how many textures do you use, and what resolution are they?
Yes, okay. I use a plugin for my UVs to make them perfectly mirrored. I forget what it's called. I'm terrible with names, but I'm sure if you just search up like Blender plugin for UV mirror, it'll show up. That's like one of my favorite ones. And then I also have a plugin that is for making clothes, but that's way down the line. And as for the textures, I always paint my textures in 4K, which it's very big, but I like having a lot of detail. I set them to be 2K in Unity because you can set it to be like, hey, it'll cap at 2K, and then, you know, don't use 4K textures in Unity. Don't do it. But it's fun to make 4K textures in Substance. Did I miss anything of the question? That was a long one.
No, I think that was good. Okay. I have another one from Yogurt asking, VRChat talks about merging atlases to optimize your avatar and use less material slots. How do you do that? Is that in Blender, Unity, or a secret third place?
See, okay. I know about making a texture atlas. I don't know how to do it. I don't do it. I probably should, but I don't. I just try to make sure that like everything on my UVs is just all one UV. So for this model, for instance, the both parts of the hair are all one texture, and then the The eyes are all another, so they can be really, really high res. And then all of the body is another texture. So I just try to limit the amount of material slots that I have. But yeah, I should probably learn how to make a texture atlas myself.
I have one from Wolf Luciana saying, as an avatar creator, which part of working on an avatar do you enjoy the most?
Ooh. See, I'm gonna be basic. I'm gonna say that I really love texturing. Cause I mean, it's the best part, of course. But I also really like making hair and clothes and body altering blend shapes and the UVs. I really like making UVs and seams. I don't know why. It's like a puzzle for me. A lot of people say that they really don't like making UVs, but I love it. It's just like I get to cut apart the little pieces and put them together.
I got another one from Chimera Dev asking, is Cat's plugin recommended? There only seems to be an unofficial release of it, and the official one hasn't been updated in 3+ years.
Cats is definitely recommended. Yes, I absolutely would recommend you use it because it's so helpful. I haven't looked at their like official site in a while. Whenever I was looking at it to like update this panel, I saw that they had a version for I think version 4 of Blender, but I haven't really looked into it very much. So all I can say is that yes, you should absolutely use cats. And if you have to use like an older version of Blender to use it, I don't mind. I'm still on version 3. I'm not on version 4 yet.
We got another really quick question from Kurt Nekoman asking, what species is your Sona? Your avatar is very pretty.
Thank you. This is a species that I've created, which is called the moontails, or also the viratails. Basically, these are like a subset species that have antennas and such and are really weird. The viratails are the more normal ones. That is another thing that if you are curious to learn more about, you can check out my card. Shameless self-promo. Thank you for asking a question that related to my species.
I have a question from Wolf asking, how does one merge objects together so I can minimize jank and avoid extra tries?
Yes. Okay, so to merge objects together, definitely, that would be a Blender thing. So you would go into Blender, and then select all of the objects that you have. You would like right click them in object mode and then just hit join. There's a button that says join and they'll all merge together as one. You can still like in edit mode and such, if you need to, you can still select individual parts because it'll kind of retain the fact that it's like separate meshes, kind of, because none of the vertices are actually connected. That's how like I made the teeth and such here. The teeth like don't move with everything else because they're not actually connected. So yeah, the join button, very important.
All right. A final question or two to wrap things up with everything that you've talked about so far. Do you have any ideas for good practice for the ideas that you've talked about? Alternatively, what did you do to practice refining the basics that you've mentioned so far?
Honestly, I just kind of do them step by step. So I first started making avatars that looked kind of like poorly cut potatoes. And then slowly, there's one in the audience. There's slowly but surely, like I started refining the head first, because the head is like, it's what you look at. It's the pretty face. And then I started refining the body, and then I figured out how to do the arms more. So the arms had better topology. I fixed that up. And then finally I fixed the feet. And currently I'm in the progress of fixing up the body topology itself so that it's nice and clean. So I just cut it up into different pieces, honestly, and refine each one individually. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, who's going to stop you if your model has a super detailed face and your body isn't at all? If it works, it works.
All right, final and probably most important question. Where can people find you? What are your socials, etc.?
Find me on Twitch. Twitch is where I stream, and then I post a lot of my art stuff to Blue Sky. I am most active on Discord. My Discord server is where I post a lot of stuff. I am constantly in there chatting and just sharing random work in progress pictures. So join my Discord. We have a lot of fun there. We're very chaotic. It's a blast. It's a good time.
All right. Thank you so much. And remember, if
Thank
you
you
guys
for
have any
having
extra
me.
questions, go into the Discord, and I'm sure that you'll want to. There's a lot of them already in the Discord, so make sure to ask all the questions to this wonderful bean over here. And yeah,
you.
that's all the questions I got for you.
Yippee!